is a warm-up. Greetings, my name is Michael Miller. This is a Michael Miller trademark training video out to you because you're watching. Thank you and welcome. It's meant for Michael Miller Pilates licensed affiliates. Michael Miller Pilates licensed presenters. For the Core New Core. For my patrons. And for anyone interested in surviving and thriving as a Pilates instructor. So there's 3 things on my list today. Number 1 is physics, then biology. Number 2 is tension. And number 3 is latency. So number one. A student of mine pointed out that, conceded that the axis at the hips, that there is rotation at the hips that defines an axis, and that is biomechanical. Okay? And to me, that's a really good sign, because that's like what I've been saying in terms of here's common knowledge and traditional way of looking at things and the folklore soup that all happens in. And like, to get to Michael Miller Pilates, you have to at least get to the first part, which is then the whole part of core new tension. And the whole part of core new tension, excuse me, I dropped my pen, my clipboard, something, and the pressure in the tripod needs to be reasserted, to be grounded, to hold some kind of stability. So I had a fellow instructor headed towards his point of view that comes from tensegrity, which it's a point of view, and it's an interesting point of view. Gives me cause to share with you how the admission of, well, okay, at the hips, there is rotation, and that is biomechanical. And then, but it went off into how somehow, can't begin to paraphrase somebody else's point of view. Maybe that's a weakness. But in reaction and what I've said to you in the past, the points of view are so multitude and they're so individual, and most of them are so embedded in folklore without any connection to a point of view that comes from an explanation of what it is for what it is. Now I'm off talking about Pilates, but really my subject, well, Pilates then biology. All right, so Pilates then biology. Where am I going with this? I'm headed to number 2. Number 2 is contrology develops the body uniformly. So develops is an important word there, and uniformly is an important word there. It's what it is and how it's done. Now, in the MMP point of view, my number 1 title is physics and then biology. In the pursuit of number 2, contrology develops the body uniformly, Well, if we're going to do that in the MMP point of view, we not only get to this point of admitting that there's biomechanical dynamic at the hips, but in the admission that there's rotation at the hips, it's not that much of a further cry to admit the rotational dynamic at the shoulders, the ears, the knees, the ankles, and the metatarsals. That's the body, that's the human being. That's the way it's evolved over billions of years. It has, from my point of view, the ability to create rotational dynamic at those places and in opposition to one another. And that I'm naming core new tension, because nobody else has, and it's obviously there to me. And that's looking at the biology and recognizing that the way it accomplishes its movement through space is through this engagement of oppositional tension within its endpoints. That's just one point of view. And it's very mechanical in nature, because as soon as you might admit that rotation around an axis is mechanical, and if your body's doing it, it's biomechanical, and then at the point where you point out the same thing or the same kind of dynamic happening in different places in the body, that's all the biology attaining the ability or developing the capacity of rotational dynamic. And it's the interaction between these endpoints that create the tension that we're after to float like a butterfly and sting like a bee. There are so many points of view about things other than my point of view of Pilates. It's a playground of passion and interest that plays out for all of us in our exploration of and enjoyment of anything that has to do with Pilates. So my number 2 point is the word tension. And so it's like, in the physics, the MMP point of view identifies or points out rotational dynamics in the body that play into how the body moves through space. It's in this oppositional tension that I call, by name I named, core new tension, that we distribute our load, and in the distribution from the tension make alignment between those 2 points sensational. MMP tries to point to the physics going on in what the body does in order to get to where it's going. Food and procreation, surviving. Pilates was Joseph Pilates was a survivor, and his method is survival training. In the jungle. I said gravity, but went jungle. Sorry, my sign didn't match my words. Like your words don't match your actions. Jungle, running through the jungle, trying to survive. What are you trying to survive? You're trying to survive gravity. And in order to do that, you have to use your muscles. And when you use your muscles, they're attached to something and they have endpoints to their attachments, right? And it's through the tension between those endpoints that the body orchestrates a much grander symphony of tension. Number 3. Oh, maybe that's what I'm thinking. Mixing folklore with theory, right? I mean, I took Joe's book, and I don't know that that's folklore, but from that I took a point of view that Pilates can be explained as having an essence in and of itself, which I think is true. It's the experience, complete coordination of being, thinking, and observing as a state of being in the body in the moment of the doing. That's the magnet that is drawing wave after wave of interest and dimension towards it. Core new tension, from my point of view, is the identification of the physics going on in the body, that it engages in core new tension through millions of years of evolution in order to stabilize itself, reach beyond itself, run like mad through the jungle, and dance like a butterfly across the stage. Or the time you spend as an instructor, teacher, presenter. There's always a spectrum of comprehension that goes with it, right? That's why you repeat things several times and say, well, okay, I'm not sure I understand what you're talking about, and to help me understand, the best I can do is say, if you're willing to agree that biomechanics is what's going on with the rotation at the hips, then biomechanically, or because of the physics that the body is accomplishing by creating a rotational dynamic, by creating a grip, right? And that the interaction of those grips, right, is real and significant and has characteristics like core new tension is what takes you into an eccentric effort. The effort itself, the engagement of core new tension is eccentric in its nature. So appreciate the physics. At least when it comes to MMP, it looks at the biology and how the biology accomplishes the physics. Life can't live forever. Shine the light as clearly as you can, and thank you for taking in some of mine. Read between the lines, see behind the curtain, connect the dots. Then add 2 and 2 while you direct your thinking Geist.